My guest today is a global content strategist and brand builder. He has produced and strategized content for the likes of Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, and Steven Bartlett, just to name a few. He's a master of building communities for his clients and has also built an enormous community for himself across Dubai and the UK. He is the man behind the Creative Content Agency, a marketing agency designed to help your brand find a voice and home online. He's consistently created results using his 4 Ps of content methodology, and today we're getting an exclusive to talk about how brands and businesses of all sizes are going to be able to benefit from his experience. Raj Kotecha, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, my friend.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've been trying to get this date in for a while, and I know you've got a super busy schedule, but I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, it's always the right time when it's time, you know?
Exactly.
So here we are.
Everything has its perfect time.
Right.
So let's get into it. I know you've done a ton of podcasts and you've been in the game for a very long time. You've been making content. You've shared your story 100 times. But for the people tuning in today who don't know who you are, can you give us a brief summary of what makes Raj the person who he is today?
I've had a lot of different experiences across different industries and over different times. So I was born in 1980, which means I grew up in the analog world, grew up in a shop, serving different customers every 20 seconds. One person wants cigarettes, next person wants a magazine, next person wants a birthday card. So I think what makes me what I am today is not just about connecting the dots, but also like collecting the dots. I've gone and had like taster sessions in so many different industries, from hospitality to foreign direct investment to sports. And I think what makes me who I am today is something that I've realized about myself as time's gone on, is that I tend to hoard insights. So I was just walking here to the studio and I got stopped outside King's Cross Station by some young kid that was collecting money for charity. And he was like, bruv, can I just stop you for a second? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he goes, yo, bruv, like there's been 800 stabbings in London, and we're just trying to raise money for preventing this kind of crime. And I was like, and I was obviously going to the train station to come here today. And I was like, bro, like I'm in a bit of a rush, but I'm staying close by. Let's do this again on one of the other days that I'm walking by. He goes, oh, do you live here? I said, I actually live in Dubai. And he goes, oh, bruv, living the good life, yeah? And I was like, okay, insight. The average guy on the street that's, one of the average guys on the street, here's Dubai, here's all of the kind of brand that comes with it, and thinks, oh, you're living the good life. Now that before would have been like, Kensington or Monaco or somewhere like that. But these are the kind of things that I hoard. These are the dots that I collect, and then I connect them. So that's what really makes me what I am today is like the breadth of experience. And also, like you said, being in the game for a long time. This is my 25th year doing this. And these insights tend to compound. So now in my 40s, I'm seeing things for the third time. I'm seeing trends come for the third time. I'm looking at the rollout of AI and I'm like, okay, I see some similarities in the way that this industry is rolling out to the way that the crypto industry rolled out 4 or 5 years ago. And then before that, the AR, VR industry. And before that, the Web 2 industry. And before that, the mobile phone and cell phone industry. So I would say that's probably like me in a nutshell in terms of like how I identify.
I've never heard anyone say connecting the dots and collecting the dots. I feel like we all know the famous saying by Steve Jobs, right? Which is you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. But I love the way you've just phrased how you collect those dots, where you're gathering those insights. What made you start banking those insights? What made you start collecting them? How do you even know that those are the things to look out for?
I'm a different kind of academic, which means that I have the classic academic background. Like I did the bachelor's and the master's and all that stuff. But when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s in Salford, it wasn't safe to go out. There was a lot of bullying, a lot of violence. I was involved in a lot of bullying and a lot of violence on the receiving side. So my dad was wise enough to be like, okay, if there's an after-school football program or an after-school cricket program, unless it's something I was like psychopathic about and I really wanted to do, kids can kick up a fuss, which I wasn't when it came to sports. I was at home and my dad had a news agency, which means that if you look at magazines like T4 magazine or Which magazine or Hip Hop Connection or The Source or Vibe or Financial Times or Sun, Mirror, all these magazines, the TV Guide, I would read all of them inside and out. So there was a certain elasticity that was created from the necessity of having to be at home. Because if you go outside, you don't know what's going to happen. So my dad was like, come home after school. So I'm in the shop, working in the shop. Plus I get access to every single magazine, every single free CD, every single free CD that's shipped out with Mix Mag and Top of the Pops. And I'm just constantly consuming content. The radio's on, whether it's Top 40, whether it's the news. So I was just like, again, hoarding this information where everything kind of had a place. Now, if you ask me like, what's the postcode of the place I'm staying in right now, I won't know. But if you ask me like about a random studio that DJ Premier recorded a record in with Guru, I'll be like, oh, I know that studio. It's whatever it may be,
So that is, to most people, seemingly useless information. Why do you find it to be useful to know those things? Or is it just something that kind of clicks in your mind and you just park it to the side for a future date because you don't know when you're going to need it?
I'm a hip hop nerd, but what's interesting about people that are my age in their 40s and 50s is that they're real hip hop nerds. So like right now, if you're like into, The Baby or 21 Savage or Baby Keem or whatever, Drake, that doesn't necessarily yet make you a hip hop nerd because these are people that have got 10, 12-year careers. When you hang out with people like the Sugar Hill Gang or Russell Peters, these are hardcore hip hop nerds, as well as, let's say you come across someone like a Raul Shah from Exposure, one of the OGs of the agency world in the UK. These are people that know their hip hop music. So some people like to go deep on, watches. Some people like to go deep on football stats or golf or cars. For me, it's hip hop.
And was it just the access to like the CDs and the tapes that were coming through the shop that kind of built that wanting of being a hip hop nerd? Or is there something else about hip hop that has caught your attention that you've never really recognized until maybe talking about it now?
No, I fully recognize it. The reason why is because the generation that we grew up in, we were caught at a crossroads where our internal culture wasn't handed down to us. So I'll give you my specific example. I'm growing up. There's all sorts of bullying going on at school. Fighting, punching, cutting, different things, right? So I go home and my cultural references are the East African Asian stuff. So like eating Kenyan food and all that, Kenyan Indian food. Bollywood on TV if my parents are watching TV. None of that's going to help me punch a guy in the face. None. Now along comes Ice Cube and Ice-T and Dre and Snoop in the 90s, 80s and 90s that are rebellious because what they're facing is what we're facing as young brown kids living in these kind of places like Salford, where they're actually like fighting back. So here's what happened. And it happened to not only brown kids living in rough white areas like me, but it happened to even kids like you growing up in Northwest London, is that we took Black people's operating system and we installed it in our hardware, which is the reason why when you go around Northwest London, South London, people talk in a street slang that comes from hip hop. It might come from UK hip hop. Now they call it like roadman language, but it's easier for us to adopt that than just to turn into like a kind of middle of the road Indian software engineer guy, which is not going to give you the tools that you need to navigate life. Because having a little bit of that attitude that we've adopted from Black people gives you that confidence to walk into that Deutsche Bank interview with your chest out a little bit. Because as Indians, we're kind of like, we're not the most chest out people. When we brag, it's a bit corny. But I think what we've adopted from them is this confidence because we see their struggle and we kind of gravitated towards it. So it's we took their operating system and installed it inside us, and that's what's given us that kind of huge advantage. I think that's one reason why I found myself in this industry. And I think that's one reason why if you put me in a lineup with, 100 Indian dudes from anywhere, like Manchester, Harrow, doesn't really matter, London, I've got a little bit more flair about me. Like I'll wear my stuff on my chest. Like I'm like, yeah, this is what I've done. and I'm not going to downplay it or lower my voice for anybody. I'm going to scream about it because there are certain other cats that are getting empowered by that are like, it's okay to talk my shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've done a few things, and most people are told, like, don't make too much noise, don't bring your head above water, nuzzer, like people will look bad on you. I'm like, fuck that. Like, this is what I'm about. We might need to beep out some of this, but like, if we're getting into that side of things, this is my truth. There's a certain flamboyance that comes with that culture that I'm super into, and I think a lot of us are into.
I love that. And by the way, nothing's going to get bleeped out because this is what...
Oh, we just keep it real.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is 100%. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather just talk about exactly things as they are.
Yeah.
Because that's what people want more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a quick note from me to say thank you so much for choosing to tune in to watch today's episode. I've checked the stats recently and I was blown away to see that 93.6% of you who choose to tune in and watch these videos aren't already subscribed to the channel. Now, if you're watching these videos because you're looking to level up in your life and make positive changes, it starts by changing your environment and what you consume. So make sure that you're subscribed to this channel so that you're consuming some incredible, inspirational, and empowering content and stories that will help you make positive changes in your life. Enjoy today's episode and stay visionary. Okay, I love that you just shared that because there's an element of something that you mentioned about what your dad said to you, which is when you finish school, come home, which obviously he's doing it out of concern, right? He's doing it out of the want of keeping you safe, which 100% makes sense. I think any parent in the world would want to do that. Yet there is an element of that which can instill, like you said, not a lack of confidence, but maybe a bit more fear into our day-to-day being. How was it just hip hop, or was there anything else that helped you come out of that shell of living in fear of what was going to happen and needing to come home that's helped you in your career today?
I don't think I actually necessarily lived in fear unless there was an actual threat in front of me, which carried on for, 20, 30 years when I was going in that Manchester. I'm still quite aware of like how things work in certain parts of that town, right? But it wasn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily like, quote unquote, live in fear. What I did like is that home was more fun than most places. You think about it, when kids go out and they hang out, what do? They go hang out outside the shop. I lived in the shop.
True.
So, of course, there's the certain advantages anytime you want a Twix bar, Whisper bar, whatever, it's there because it's your dad's shop. On the flip side, every magazine you want is there. And eventually, and this is really aging myself right now, but eventually satellite TV came out. And once we had the money, we got satellite TV, and we went from 4 or 5 channels, I think it was 4 at the time, to dozens. That's when you start watching The Lick, or you start seeing like the Trevor Nelsons and the Lisa Lyansons on TV and the Normskis and all these kind of people, and you're like, wow, this is really, really cool. So I actually put a lot of it to like, I actually give a lot of credit from that side of things to like hip hop media, whilst at the same time not discounting the kind of stuff that I learned from my granddad and dad, because my dad would take me to the wholesaler and would walk me around the aisles and be like, what's the VAT on that? What's the VAT on that? And he'd see me struggle. And then eventually he was like, okay, I'm going to tell you how to calculate VAT. This thing is £20 plus VAT. At the time, VAT was 17.5% before it was 20. At 17.5%, I was like, I don't know, this is complicated. It's a 0.5. Da, da. He said, do you know what 10% of £20 is? I was like, yes. He goes, what? I said, £2. He goes, okay, what's half of that? I said, £1. He goes, what's half of that? 50. He goes, well, that's 10, 5, and 2.5. Add it up. That's your VAT.
Perfect, simple maths.
These kind of like things were very, very influential to me, because now I find maths a lot easier. And it was also important for him as well, because he saw me struggling at school because I was dealing with a lot, to then also get me a tutor so that when everybody else is like chilling, I'm at home after school getting additional tuition, and it kind of ramps your brain up for the life that I ended up in, at least.
I love the way that the breakdown of that made it so simple that it just clicked in your head. And I've just been thinking about why I like math so much, Because if you ask me to sit down and write an essay, I used to purposely back in school write in bigger writing just to fill up more pages because I felt like I had no idea what to write. But you give me maths to do and I can do it all day long because there was ways of breaking it down into simpler functions, which just got you to an answer faster. Do you use the same concept in the way that you guide people or companies to create content? Is that like something that is a skill that's transpired for you?
Well, the way I calculated VAT was based on first principles, which is like there's a certain percentage of a certain number. And if you stack 3 of those up, you're going to end up with the number that you want. The same exists in content. So the dissection is the core basis of the thing that most people in the content industry know me for, which is the 4 Ps of content.
Yep.
So once I went full time into running this content agency, the creative content agency, which was after a company I worked for in Los Angeles got acquired, I looked at all of my projects and I was like, okay, I now need to write the content for my website. So as I'm writing it all down and I'm writing every project that I've done, I'm noticing patterns, I'm connecting the dots. And I'm like, Jesus, in this one, what did I do? I was planning, producing, publishing, promoting, I'm like, this is occurring in all of them. Then I zoomed out and I thought to myself, well, let's just look at content in the macro, like the whole industry. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about thumbnails or descriptions or metadata or posting times or video length or edit styles. No matter what you're talking about one of 4 variables. Ultimately, all aspects of the content universe will ultimately land in one of 4 bins: plan, produce, publish, promote. If you go all the way back to the days of Van Gogh, Van Gogh had to plan what he was going to paint before he published it on a canvas or before he produced it on a canvas. Only once it was produced on the canvas was it published on the gallery wall. And only once it was published on the gallery wall could the gallery promote it, plan, produce, publish, promote. The only difference is the gallery wall today is a YouTube URL.
I absolutely love that. Before we go deeper into the 4 Ps aspect and essentially what you do and what you help brands do, why content? Why was that the point of focus for you?
I guess because I was consuming it a lot. Magazines are content. TV is content. Satellite TV is content. Buying VHSs and DVDs is all content. It's something I enjoy doing. It's something I think I always run 2 tracks on a piece of content. One is like consuming it, and whether I like it or not, I'm also analyzing it. I'm looking at edits and framing. I mean, you saw when I walked in the studio right now, I was like, okay, you got that. So what does that connect to? And then your man there said, Jamie said, oh, I've got the pod mics. And I was like, at £99, that is the best sounding microphone by a million miles in that price category. I know my shit. So I think that's definitely part of it. Is I have a passion for content. Not everybody follows their passion, but for me, I was like supported by my parents. So they were not pushing me down a particular track that would give them economic freedom, because they are working class Kenyans. So many people are like going to accounting and finance, engineering, software, doctors. Why? Because for them, that is a long-term ticket of social mobility that changes for all generations that follow. And of course, people want best for their kids. They don't want people to struggle the way that they did. They'd much rather see their kid on a fixed 6-figure salary than doing what they're doing, which is hustling. And I respect that. I think my parents kind of maybe identified from an early age that I'll eventually just get there. Or they were just like, they don't want to put me under that pressure. I think that's a question for them, but I've always been allowed to kind of like follow my interests. And it's not always just about passion. I think people oversell passion. They're like, follow your passion, but there's many people not. I think it's about following what you care about. I want to leave this industry in a better situation than I found it. And I care about this. You can go against your passion. Necessity can push you away from your passion, but you can't go against what you care about, because that's at like a soul level. It's a little bit deeper. If you care about something, you can't be like, well, I'll get to it later. If you care about keeping the lights on, you're going to pay that light bill. It's not passion that makes you pay the light bill. It's not a passion for bills. It's what you care about. And so that's much more of a root cause emotion that I operate from, rather than, being distracted by something that I may or may not be temporarily passionate about.
How do you differentiate that passion that is driven by what you care about and the passion that's potentially a distraction?
So I've got a long list of distractions that have cost me a lot of time and money, and all I can chalk them up at is just lessons. So I'll give you an example. As recently as February, we just spent months and months and months and thousands on a brand. We launched the brand in a big way. I was meant to have a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, a very respected guy on the internet. And it turns out that we had the conversation with him after the launch, but I was confident this brand was going to work. It's about 2-3 weeks after the brand launched. I spoke to him and he goes, "That's not a brand." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Can you honestly see gathering a bunch of people with that on their t-shirt?" And I was like, "Fuck no." And we scrapped it.
Really?
Yeah. And we went, it was all chips on it. And we were openly talking about it. You'd see that brand associated to my name. I was talking about it on podcasts. I was getting introduced on stage and as this on TV. In fact, I was introduced as having this brand. And then he was like, it wouldn't make sense. And I was like, I can't argue with him because the guy was smarter than I am. And so we scrapped it. And then it pushed us back to the drawing board. We revisited it, changed the name, changed the logo, changed everything. And now it's bulletproof. So I'm like, okay, brilliant. So sometimes your passion, even your instinct with experience can lead you astray. You just have to kind of accept that that's going to happen. It's part of being long in the game. No one has like a flawless track record. I've got at least 2 brands that have not worked or that I've been distracted away from for every 1 brand that's worked. For every My Friends, Your Friends, which has become like a huge sensation in Dubai, and we launched last year in Toronto and New York and London, there's a shuffle, which is an all-genre party that we did 4 of and scrapped. There's an incredible concept called Crowd 9, where everybody gets 9 minutes and the people speak 1 minute at a time on one subject, and the slides change.
That's cool.
So they can only talk about that subject for 1 minute, and everyone's given the 9 subjects in advance. So instead of saying, "I'm Dipesh, if I wasn't doing this right now, I'd be doing this," it would say, "Currently in a parallel universe, I'm."
Oh, wow. I love that.
Right? So it kind of adds a bit of flair to it. And we had one of my good brothers, one of the sheikhs from the UAE, come to that event and speak. It was a success, like a complete success. Still to this day, people say, "When are you going to bring back Crowd 9? Got distracted, didn't have the time, didn't have the resources. So there's 2 of them for every 1 thing that people know me for, if at least 2, I would say.
What makes you pull away from it? Like, what kind of distraction takes you away from it? And then why don't you go back to it sooner? What's the reason?
Because whatever it is that pulls me away sends me down a rabbit hole, which ultimately on balance is more interesting. So in the UAE at the moment, we look after like some really incredible brands. One of them today is a like large listed company, a very famous one. And the opportunity cost of going back to my own garden and digging my own plants in my little patch that I've got versus a big brand coming to me and saying, "You can landscape this stadium." If something comes along that's a bigger canvas, as a creative and as somebody who's responsible for people's salaries, we've got to orientate our resources towards that, because you've only got your human capital and your financial capital. That's it. And as the CEO, you've got to decide where are those best placed. And it would be irresponsible of me to place them into something which is smaller just because I can make it go from small to medium. And then that brand gets a bit of applause and it boosts my ego. It's not the right thing to do. Now, I've done that before. I've done that in my 20s and 30s. But as you get older and as you start to reflect, and the good thing about, me having footage from 2005, 2006, 2007 is I can physically look at tapes. We recorded me on tape in those days. I can look at tapes of myself and be like, damn, I was doing that all the way wrong. Like, it's all well and good because sometimes when you think back early parts of your career, the brain and the ego romanticizes what that time was like. And you go, well, I guess it was worth it. But when you look at something on tape and you go, nah, that was a hardcore mistake. We cannot do that again under any circumstances.
let's go into some of those mistakes. Talk to me about like reflecting back on those videos and seeing some of those things where you're like, that is 100% not the way it should have been done. What were some of those mistakes, and what was it specifically that you would have changed?
So I have to give credit to the new generation of creators that have come along that have really brought to the forefront the value of as soon as possible getting to your authentic voice. So whether you look at someone like, my friend Andrew Schultz, just when the whole cancel culture thing was happening, he just stuck to his guns and said, I'm going to make jokes about anything. And his saying is, anyone can get these jokes, or everyone's going to get these jokes. I think that's one thing that I wish earlier in my career, somebody had said, hey, listen, this might not seem like a now goal, but the sooner you can get to your authentic voice, the better it's going to be for you. Like one of the highest ROIs in this industry that we're in, the content creation industry, is getting to your authentic voice. The other one being just generally being a kind and nice person.
Mm-hmm.
That combination is a guaranteed algorithm for success. Guaranteed. Like you can take that to the bank, because I am around a lot of these new creators. Many of them don't know who I am. Many of them don't know some of the projects I've shipped in the past successfully. And they will see you at events, often with the headliner. And these are people that are being kind of lauded right now, that know the face and name, but won't come over and shake your hand because they're in their zone. What they don't realize, though, is that by not being kind in real life, someone like me who's got access to decision makers and budgets isn't going to think about them when someone says, I need someone for a keynote, or I need someone to host this panel in Dubai or, Sydney or whatever it may be. And I think because we've been in contact for a while, that you get an introduction from me on DM, good things happen.
Definitely.
And they happen very quickly. We don't need to say what it was, but we keep that between us.
Yep.
But like, I think the combination of being truly authentic, I'm hoping that the person sat across from you right now is exactly the person you've seen on all the other interviews.
100%.
You don't get that with everybody.
And I will just say, not just on the mic. So even before, when you came in, it is exactly how I imagined you would be, because I can sense that from you when I've seen you in other interviews. So it's the consistency all through.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. There are so many people that talk about authenticity, right? What is an authentic voice? Like, talk to me about how someone listening to this right now who might be wanting to create content, who might be wanting to get themselves out there, they're doing things to try and get engagement. They're doing things to try and build a brand for themselves. What does authenticity look like for them? Like, how do they go about practically finding that?
Authenticity is a P&L. It's a profit and loss sheet. If you are constantly doing things for profit, the profit in the context of content creators being likes, comments, shares, then you have to bend and optimize your voice for that.
Mm-hmm.
An authentic voice is a profit and loss sheet. I have to accept that some of my biggest paying clients are going to have seen me in this video swearing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll take it because that's my authentic voice. Could there be some losses? Are there some people watching this video right now being like, I probably would have worked with that guy, but now I don't want to because, and then they see something they're not too into. That's okay. An authentic voice comes with pros and cons, profit and loss. If you are putting out your voice and there is no downside, then it may not be your real voice, because there is enough psychodiversity and biodiversity in humanity that even if you're the greatest guy in the world, some people aren't going to like you. Another friend of mine, Gary Vee, he is one of the greatest contributors to the paradigm of online content plus entrepreneurship, period.
Correct.
He is the most authentic dude I have ever met. You talk about consistency. When you talk to him in real life, you feel like you're in his video. You also probably are, because there'll be somebody shooting at the same time. He also accepts that there's some people that just aren't going to rock with him because he's just keeping it his way, right? He's a East Coast, loud, gregarious guy, and that's not for everybody. And I'm sure that there are multi-million-dollar contracts that his agency doesn't get, not because his agency is not capable of doing the work, because they're an incredible agency, but because they just don't connect with the kind of key person of influence in that company.
Definitely. I mean, Gary Vee is exactly the same in person as he is. Very similar to like yourself. It's the same in person as you are seeing him online. We went, God, this is years ago now. He put up a post on Instagram saying he's in London. He's going to be on a street somewhere down Soho against another street.
That was in 2016.
That was it.
The night after was Vaynerworld 2. That was my event. And I was in that crowd when people were stood up on the posts and they were stood on the bins and they were circled around him.
Then me and you were there at the same night.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so when I went,
small world.
I went, yo, Gary. And he was signing and he goes, who's that? And I was like, Raj Kotecha. And he goes, yo, and he signed, put his thing over and then came out of the crowd and gave me a hug. And the police came and they couldn't arrest anybody because nobody was breaking the law.
Yeah.
Everyone was just surrounding him. It was a beautiful night.
It was a great night. And I remember getting a selfie with him with Krish as well.
Wow.
And we literally drove out there for that. And it's got to be one of the best experiences because you realize that to me is what authenticity is, where he was the same, which means that the stuff you saw wasn't stuff that he was saying just for the likes, the follows, and all of that. It was because he actually believed it. And branching on Gary Vee, which is a huge name in itself, you've got Gary Vee, you've got Tony Robbins, you've got Steven Bartlett. You have done work for all three of those, just to name a few, plus.
So I would say with. So
Okay.
some of those people are direct.
Yeah.
And some of those people are indirect.
Okay,
But
fine.
I'm still the guy that they come to when they say, oh, listen, we've got this guy. I don't want to break down on a per basis who I work directly with and who I don't. But in some of those names and a dozen others, somebody will be like, hey, we've got this guy or girl coming. We need this produced. What's interesting is that more often than not, whether it be Gary or Tony or Jay Shetty, this can sometimes be the second, third, fourth time you're meeting them. So you're in a situation where your client, if it's the client that's booked that person, is really happy to have that person there and they're kind of like on protocol, right? They're like, oh, here he is. Whereas we'd see like a Jay Shetty knock on the door at the dressing room, dap it up, chop it up. And then I'm letting him know like, yo, we know each other. Today's shoot's going to go super well. If anything goes sideways, you're my man. I'm going to hold it down for you. I'm going to make sure that nothing bad happens. I want to make sure that nothing bad happens for any celebrity that we work with.
Yep.
But obviously, if it's a guy that you've originally met in a social setting, there's a little bit more of a connection where you're like, hey, listen, I might pop into your dressing room 20 minutes later and let you know, like, hey, this is about to happen in 20 minutes. Just a bit of a heads up. Like the officials might have not told you this, but I'm going to tell you right now because I want you to be prepared.
I love that. How did you get to the point of being the go-to person for these names, for these brands, for these celebrities?
Once I started sharing what I'd done, it gave big brands the confidence to call or text me when they were going to be engaging with these people. What's happened in Dubai, as the Dubai brand has grown, especially post 2020, is that it's become a magnet for celebrities. And it's become a magnet for thought leaders because the entrepreneurship community is growing at an insane rate. That community needs mentorship, it needs guidance, it needs education, it needs inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that brands are realizing that a way of building their brand is by bringing these people on the ground and having them keynote or speak or do Q&A, meet and greets. This is different brands adopt different strategies. And whether they see me with projects that I've done with individual people or word just gets around, typically I'll be on the receiving end of a text or a phone call being like, hey, this guy's coming. We need a bit of support. Some of that support might be, hey, listen, we need a really good crew that can come in and set up the cameras, but we want you to executive produce it. Others could be like, we want to do something really different, something that really hits. We've got this person. This is what they do 99% of the time. We're trying to go fringe and do something a little bit out there. And we're a creative shop. Like, that's what we do. And so we've often got ideas, doing things like that. We just did a project with the St. Regis recently. And with Daniel Priestley on AI. Very cool. 40 people. And there was a collaboration with Rom St. Bart's, which is Mikhail Sylvester's brand from Manchester United.
Yep.
And it was really, really intimate, like really, really cool. We took a video, put the video out. There were people in that room that 100% right now are DMing me on a regular basis saying, can we do a collab or can we do some business? And they will then do something. Some of them will do something with us. Some of them won't for any reason. And then that will lead to the same effect again. And it's just this kind of like consistent domino effect. That probably started around 2005, 2006, when Russell Peters came over to do a tour date. In those days, somebody going to get hurt real bad was just bubbling. He was just crossing over.
Yeah.
He was doing 1,200 seats. Yeah. He was doing 1,200 seats in King's Cross, and he came back a year later and did 3,000 at the Apollo. Vic and I organized, Vic, my cousin and business partner, many people know him, organized an after party. And so we kind of stood next to this guy and we delivered a service around this person. And then that meant that, you know, you find yourself in other situations where other brands want to work with you. I've also been quite proactive about it. So I used to work for a company in Los Angeles that I told you about. We got acquired by The Guardian in 2008, just before the great financial crisis. And they would take me out to New York and LA on a regular basis. And I would do my job for them, like in these big conferences where MySpace and A Small World and Facebook and all these guys would be there. And then in the evenings, I'd be in Harlem or I'd be in Inglewood. And I would have my own camcorder with me, producing content with different people from the hip hop and R&B community. So whether it's Collie Buddz or, you know, the rap list of people that we work with is insane. Bobby Valentino, this, that, whatever it may be. And I think that also then got me some more association. What it also did is it got me a little bit of a cool factor with my own peers, which is like the young Indian guys who then go off to work with banks and brands. And so then they call you in and say, oh, listen, I know you make content with like rappers. Could you make a video about the Royal Bank of Scotland Halloween party? I go, sure. The tech is the same.
So, okay, I'm going to pause you there for a second. How do you convince a bank, that level of corporate entity, to take an idea from someone who's producing content for rap and hip hop? Like, how does that connection get made? Obviously, you get the intro.
No, it's an inside job. It was just completely somebody inside the business said, this is a Halloween party that we're doing. It's low stakes. We don't have, you know, important people there. We've not got like hardcore protocols. It's just a fun Halloween party. And my friend makes videos and he'll come and make us a nice little 1-minute wrap-up video. So in those days, you could literally take Michael Jackson Thriller, put it as the music underneath, take a bunch of people, corporate people, bloody Sandra from accounts and John from operations, all dressed up in their little weird outfits, and you shoot it on a flip cam, which was the kind of camera of choice when BlackBerry was a thing. And you edit it together on not pre-Final Cut, we were using iMovie, and you send it over to them. And now they've got this little piece of content and they think about you as that guy. That was a little bit easier to do. We also did some work for like Accenture, and that probably meant a little bit more paperwork. But again, there wasn't many of us. Dipesh, when I started in this game, the word content wasn't a normal word. In those days, it was called online media or new media in 05, 06, 07. So people would be like, oh, you're the Twitter guy. Like, you're the guy that talks about Twitter. That's enough. That was enough to get you through the door.
Jeez.
And I think that's what's helped me stand out today. And I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of people that give advice and consulting and coaching, and they are creators. And I think a creator, especially an established creator, is a great person to learn from. And if you get a chance to learn from someone, even if you pay them, you should do it. I've done it. But it's different when you learn from a producer. Because as a producer, we're not telling you about the content that I've made as Raj Kotecha, although I've made a lot. But I'm also giving you the advice through the lens of the work we've done for brands. And brands are different because they are paying from a budget. And if a brand is dipping into its budget, it's doing so because it wants a return on its investment. So I'm giving you advice from the point of view of, hey, listen, this bank or this brand gave money because they wanted this in return. Most creators that learn from other creators want to do it because their ROI is their own growth. So I think that's what separates us from the rest of the market, is that you can get coaching and consulting from wherever you want. And I think you should try a bunch of different people. But if you learn from us, you're also learning from the 20 or 30 different brands we've worked with, plus the brands we've built ourselves, like the My Friends, Your Friends, and things like that you've mentioned.
I mean, I absolutely love the distinction because I've never thought of it that way. And I'm going to pick your brain about a couple of things then. Okay. So I'm curious to see how your mind works around this stuff from that perspective of producing. So you've worked with massive names and you've worked with very established businesses as well. So let's use this as an example for a business that is just starting. And if we use something that is a little bit more left field, for example, I'm looking at the kind of candle behind you. Candles are a huge product online. So there's a bunch of people trying to melt wax and sell their own candles and create a brand around candles. As someone who does what you do, what would be your advice to that business or that person who's looking to grow that brand to help them kind of grow and flourish and get a serious return on investment from creating that product?
Ironically, a commoditized brand like a candle or tea or anything like that is one of the easiest things to build a content strategy around. Why? Because it leaves your business as a commodity. It is one of many candles that person could buy. The story is in the execution of that product. So was that candle used as a gift to a bunch of bridesmaids? And those bridesmaids all decide to do their hen do, like the bride decides to do a hen do in an old country house in Shropshire. And it was one of those country houses where they do like, the murder mystery thing at night. And the welcome kit was one of the candles. So you have to flip the content strategy on the user because the variance, the independent variable is the usage of the commodity, not the commodity itself. I'll give you an even better example. One of the greatest companies.
Go on.
One of the greatest companies to come out of the UK is moo.com. They do business cards and stationery, but they started off primarily in business cards. A business card is 55 millimeters by 85 millimeters. It is one of the most commoditized pieces of stationery in business, period. You could argue that it's the original form of social media because rather than a piece of media going out as one piece and then being duplicated 100 times through shares and forwards, you pre-duplicate it and buy 100 and you hand them out in a social environment when you are socially networking.
Good point.
So that I say that to say how simple and commoditized the product is. So once they tell you what the paper's made out of, what the weight is, and even how it feels, which is a very difficult thing to communicate online, they now hit a wall, which is, okay, we've said what we are, and we are what we are, and now it kind of stops. The way that moo.com smashed it is that they told the story of their customers and how their customers used the cards. See, once you sell a business card, but your customer can put any design they want on it, the customer's design inspires the next customer's designs. Then what happens is people remix the commodity. So people take a business card, put 8 squares on it, and then start putting hole punches in it. Now the business card is a loyalty card, but it's a luxury cotton loyalty card, which makes you feel like paying more of a premium for that coffee. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some people put a hole in it and make it into a label. Some people don't hand it out as a business card, but put it inside a package when they e-com and send a product out. Some people will handwrite on the cards or stain the cards with tea or anything like that. So it's the user's execution of the commodity that is the content opportunity, the user-generated content, or making case studies and stories about how that thing left your business as a commodity and then got tailored by the customer.
I freaking love that. That is such a different insight to what I've heard from so many other people who are not doing anything bad, but like educators in the space of trying to build a brand. But it's the first time I've heard it flipped that way. So, okay.
But remember, I'm not a teacher. Education is a byproduct of me actually running a business for the last 20 years. Like the business was registered. You can check it on Companies House in 2006. This is real. So when people say like, I want to build my brand so I can be a speaker, I'm like, the fuck are you going to speak about? Speaking is a byproduct of whatever it is you do. I've worked with people that have done like, scaled big mountains and all that kind of stuff. And they speak and I'm like, cool. The thing you're going to speak about is the grit that it took you to, do those 7 marathons in 7 weeks or scale that mountain or whatever it may be. People that think speaker first or educator first, trainer, coach, consultant first, need to have some sort of stripes and bruises. I can only give you that great example and that great answer because as sure as night follows day, I've tried it wrong 7 or 8 times. I'm giving you the 9th or 10th time where I tried it, where I'm like, oh, that's how it works. And the benefit of this podcast and having this conversation with me is that we don't need to start a business and walk through the fire together for 15, 16 years to figure out how moo.com did it. I can just tell you.
That is, that 9th iteration from experience is probably the most invaluable thing because I've spent my career in sales, right? Which over the last 7 years was selling high ticket courses. And when people ask me about selling a high ticket course, again, I have the answers for that very quickly, but it's because I've fucked up God knows how many sales in the process over the last 7, 8 years. So that completely makes sense. I'm going to pick on one more thing then. Let's use the podcast as an example. So you're here on this podcast because I reached out to you. We've had a relationship beforehand anyway, where you made an amazing introduction for me, like you said.
Prior to that, did I not see you making IG content and just DM you and be like, yo, bro, I see you doing your thing?
Yes, you did.
That was the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, you did.
See how gangster that is?
That was a long time ago.
Long time ago. But I did it out of respect because I was like, this kid's great, right? This must have been 5 years ago.
This was, 2018, 19.
Yeah, something like that. So 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I still do that to this day. At least once a week. If I see a creator, I'm like, this kid's doing a better job than I did when I was his age. I'll just send them a note and be like, yo, bro, I see you working. Keep going. Whether they look at my account, see what I've done, Google me, I don't give a shit. I feel like my responsibility now as like an elder statesman in this content shit is to find certain younger cats that are doing it and just be like, yo, I want to go on the record and say, I see you working. Because in the early stages of your career, firstly, it's lonely. It's a lot of work you're doing by yourself,
100%.
a lot of stuff you're trying to figure out by yourself. And secondly, to go and give your credit card to a professional studio like this one is a choice that you're making, which may mean one less restaurant trip that month, or, you take a whole bunch of studio time and that might mean one less weekend away that year.
Yeah.
Right? So in that commitment, there is a lack of predictability, an occasional self-doubt. And I feel like if somebody does reach out and be like, yo, I see you, like that can be meaningful. And here we are 6 years later. And I'm telling you that I'm very conscious of the fact that you paid for this, whatever the number is. I'm trying to 10x that number in value. And, my team's going to obviously look at this content and figure out what matters to them in the business and put it out. And we're going to build together. We're going to progress together. And that's an approach that I'm not seeing from other cats right now. And I genuinely care. Like I genuinely give a fuck about people like you, and I love what you do, and I respect it. It's the first thing I told you when I walked in.
100%.
I was like, I know about you. Like I know you've read Napoleon Hill. I know you fuck with Naval. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm aware. and I'm aware of a lot of these younger cats. I have time on my hands where I can scroll through the internet and be like, who's doing their thing? Who's doing their thing?
You definitely know me better than any other guest I've ever had on. I can tell you that now.
So, I'm in the streets for real. Yeah. Like I'm really I'm watching everybody.
That is next level commitment but there's something that you shared there, which I think is really important, right? Which is you feel like you want to be one of those elder statesmen where you're kind of providing that support, providing that encouragement where people don't really get it. What makes you want to do that? Like, why is that so essential for you specifically? Because it makes, don't get me wrong, it helps me massively. But do you get anything else from that?
Yeah, I get like insane feel good moments from it. Like I was at a wedding last weekend, and I'll just say his name because he's incredible. But do you know Nanesh, DJ Rugrat?
I've heard the name,
Musical
but I don't know
movements.
him. Yeah,
the kid is incredible. Like he's in his late 30s now. He started DJing at a gig when I left Manchester after 5 years of being in nightlife. He was one of the DJs that the young cats that were in my crew, they wanted to keep doing gigs, obviously, because it's a great thing to be doing at uni. And he stepped in and became one of the DJs. I seen him last weekend, and at the end of the set, he was like, "Yo, man, like, you really done your thing." And we'd had a couple of drinks, but I think something along the lines of like, "You've been an inspiration," and that kind of stuff. Me watching Nanesh, me watching DJ Rugrat, let me say his name the way that more people will know it, but me watching DJ Rugrat crush it is incredible, because when Vic and I stopped DJing, we left it somewhere. He's taken it to a different level. Like, he's got 12 DJs underneath him. He's doing international shows.
Wow.
He's done BBC. And then people, normal human beings that meet him around town also like him. Like, the streets also like him. So that makes me feel great, because I don't want the thing that I'm passionate about to stop when I step out of it. And if I know that someone like that has DJ'd a party that I left behind, or I think he mentioned that he came to Vaynerworld too, jab, jab, jab. No, the Ask Gary Vee show book launch that we did, and he was there, and he remembers that, and that's meaningful to him. That makes me feel great. You also have to remember that being on the receiving end of a compliment like that isn't something that everybody feels. So I can tell you that the quality of that high is better than the quality of highs you'll get from likes and comments and other accolades. It's and it also builds your ego in a way, not whereby you throw it in people's faces, but it protects you from criticism. See, I'm a loud cat. Like, I don't hold anything back. But the purpose of my ego is never to push anybody down. It's to shine a light and help somebody figure out where to go next. And if I shine a light that's bright enough, no matter how far, if I'm really far ahead of you in this game, but I shine a really bright light, that light will illuminate all back to where you are, and you'll see the path. Because I'm very vocal about my mistakes. So I'm putting all of my hurdles in my past and saying, like, just so you know, this is where I messed up. This is where I lost a bunch of money. This is where I wasted 9 months of my life where I could have been investing it over here. And that's really, really meaningful to me. That then builds your ego up in a way whereby it's not there to knock anybody down, but it's also there to prevent other people from knocking me down. Because my ego is like an ozone layer, and it filters negativity coming in towards me. So if I know what I've done, and I know that in these private conversations or in these kind of like really nice moments, that I get that, and that Nanesh moment happens every week with somebody, that's very meaningful to me. Because I know then that if somebody does criticize me or misinterpret something that I've said or done, which when you communicate at scale the way that I do, that can happen.
Yep.
I don't take it personally, because people will do that, and that's okay. And I've been critical of other people in my mind, whether I vocalize it or not, because we all do. We all look at the lens through our own kind of OS, operating system. But then you're walking down Oxford Street and somebody who you know wants to take a selfie with you. And again, that doesn't happen to the average person. And it gives you a kind of a good feeling that makes you want to get up and do it again the next day.
100%. And something similar to what you sent me as a message for all those years ago happened on Friday last week, where we were out and about with a group of friends. And this is someone that I've known for most of my childhood through high school. Don't really see them often, but randomly through a group of friends, we've kind of reconnected and we just hang out. And we were all out together. And they turned around and they were like, I listened to your content. And I was like, really? Because I've never noticed them like anything, comment anything. I didn't even realize that they followed me. So I had no idea. And that moment where they shared that they watch the content and it really helps them and it really kind of makes them not just feel good, but it almost inspires them. The high off of that was insane, because it gave me the same kind of feeling of like, there's a reason why I'm doing this. And it almost gave me that reassurance that I'm on the right track. And I think that's what's so important about it, because you're right, 100%. It feels not just lonely, but it can feel exhausting. I think the idea of trying to build something that has real meaning and real value is it's a long road. Hey guys, just a quick one. The purpose of this podcast is to help you create a life you love in all areas. That includes your business, your career, your relationships, your health, and of course, travel and lifestyle. One of the most amazing travel experiences I've ever had in my life was to the Maldives last year, thanks to Simply Maldives, who organized everything from the flights, the transfers, and the incredible luxury hotels. I personally wouldn't recommend anything that I haven't tried and tested myself and had a phenomenal experience with, which is why I'm super proud to say that this podcast is now officially sponsored by Simply Maldives. Simply Maldives is a dedicated travel agency that specializes in helping you find the perfect trip to any of the Maldivian islands. So whether you're considering your honeymoon, your next romantic getaway, a trip with loved ones or family, or even kids, fill out the form below for a no obligation quote for you to see if the Maldives could be your next luxury destination. And it is, like you talk about this all the time, right? It's a long-term play, it's a long game, and therefore it is going to get tiring. It's a marathon, and there's not many people that manage to finish a marathon. So those little nuggets, so if anyone's listening, those little shares, those insights, and I don't just mean towards me or Raj, but for anyone in your life that's doing something great and you can see it, let them know, because it could literally change their day, change their life, because they could be at a point where they're feeling like giving up or slowing down or changing their mind. And that message is exactly what they needed to see or hear that completely changes the trajectory of their life. And I think that's actually the power of what you're doing. Like, that's what I get from it anyway.
Fair way to assess it, bro.
So then about this podcast, because you saw me making content from years ago, and I look back on that and going, oh my God, what was I doing? So what would you say to me then to grow what I'm doing? Like, to get this to a level where it is on the same level as people like Jay Shetty, Steven Bartlett, Gary Vee, where I look up to those guys and I'm like, whoa, like they've gone and created absolute magic. And I would love to be at that level. What would your advice be?
Why would you love to be at that level?
The reason I do these interviews is because I like, in my own mind, things around business. I like things around finance, and I think just general money, like understanding how money works. And on a personal level, because I've spent so much time in personal development, I love spirituality, consciousness, like manifestation, all that stuff, in terms of how we are the creators of our own reality, which is why the podcast is called The Mindful Creator, because we are essentially creating everything in our life. So the things that I'm trying to get from my guests is an understanding of how those things worked in a way that school never taught me. And I know I'm finding it extremely valuable, because from what I've learned from my guests so far, I've had opportunities in business. I've had opportunities in property investment come up, which I didn't even realize were possible. I've grown more and more in my own awareness from a spiritual level. And if I'm benefiting from it, then I know that there will be other people that can benefit from those conversations.
So they'll benefit differently because you get direct opportunities from the people that you network with.
Yeah.
This podcasting is just a rich guy's way of taking someone for coffee. Just gives you direct access to people. Let's just keep it real.
Yeah.
You can say to someone,
I love that.
you can say to someone, can we get coffee? Or can I take you to your favorite restaurant? And they're going to be like, do I have 90 minutes? I want to do this podcast with you. And it's taken us a year or whatever it's taken us 6 months, right? This is just a rich guy's way of freaking remixing, taking someone for coffee. You spend a couple £100 in a podcast studio and you've got that person's undivided attention, and it serves their purpose because they get more media out there and they rank a bit higher on YouTube in terms of there's more content. It's ultimately what it is. What I need to know the answer to, which you didn't answer, is the second half to the sentence that begins, I want 1 million downloads per episode because.
Okay. So
if we're talking Jay Shetty numbers.
Yeah. So 1 million downloads per episode, because I would love to create a a sustainable income from doing this full time,
Okay. What are you prepared to do to get it?
whatever it takes.
Okay. What's the metric? What's the final metric that gets you the 1 million downloads?
I have no idea.
What's the final metric that gets you 1 million downloads?
Just the number of downloads, right?
Correct. Okay, so why is Amazon great at what they do? Not because they've got the best prices, not because they've got the best choice. Amazon is an operations company that cross-dresses like an e-commerce company. That's why the website's awful versus like a Shopify one.
That is a great point.
So, as an operations company, they have mastered last mile delivery. There are companies, especially new e-commerce companies, that can do everything but get it through the letterbox. They can get it to the post office of the town where their customer is, but they can't get it through the letterbox. Your job is to get this podcast through the letterbox of your listener. And to do that, you are going to have to go to every single letterbox and post this podcast. Here's what's going to happen after this podcast, just so you know.
Yeah.
And I've been in this game. The parts of this podcast that are most meaningful to me, of which there are many because you're good at what you do, are going to be broken down into clips.
Mhm.
Let's say there's 6 interesting clips. Something's educational, something's inspirational, some parts are entertaining. The clip about Nainesh, maybe I'll just,
Yeah.
that's a moment. That clip about Nainesh and that moment that him and I had a few days ago will be texted to him.
Mhm.
And even if I don't cut the micro out, I personally will go to YouTube on my laptop, which is the only place you can do this. Pause before I start talking about Nainesh. Then tick the button that says timestamp.
Mhm.
So you get the URL timestamp. I will paste that into his WhatsApp and send it to him. And be like, bro, you came up in one of the podcasts. Last mile delivery. That one clip about that one person into that one person's WhatsApp. I still do that to this day.
Wow.
This shirt, right, will end up in the inbox or the WhatsApp of the founder of the company that designed this shirt. And 99.9% of the people watching this will have no clue about what this shirt is. But you know who knows?
Founder.
And
All the people.
Giggs, the biggest rapper in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
This logo is meaningful. I won't tell you.
Yeah.
No point in getting into like why.
Yeah.
But it's all in that scaling the unscalable. You're at that stage right now where you've got to put that work in. I saw a Daniel Priestley video this morning where he said when he launched Score App, he personally DM'd 3,000 people. And now that business is probably at 2 to 3 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. It's worth it if you're prepared to put the work in. What's then going to happen is that more people are going to consume the content, which means your numbers, which are between 1 and 300 now, will go to 2 and 3,000. That's going to attract a slightly bigger guest. And then you can start harvesting the brand alliance with that person. I'm very conscious, especially when I come into a room like this, that there's a bigger chance that I'm going to be the reason why the majority of spins will come on this. Because I can go to the My Friends, Your Friends database and email this to 6,500 people.
Yep.
And people in New York and they're going to be opening their phone and be like, oh, there's that My Friends, Your Friends guy. Let's see what is in his latest podcast about. So it's in my interest to do it because I knew that I was going to be in a good zone when I came here today. I was like very happy. So I knew it was going to be a great podcast. But all your guests aren't going to do that for you. So if they're not going to do it, but you've got them on your show because A, you want to learn, but sometimes B, the other person's got a bit of momentum going anyway, and you're hoping that some of that rubs off on you.
Absolutely.
But the internet's a busy place. Everyone's doing this. No one's going to be like, oh, Dipesh got this person on and I really like that person, so let me watch them being interviewed. They might like that person because they're the ones normally doing the interviewing.
You have given me such a slap in the face moment of what I tell everyone when it comes to sales. And you've just completely shifted my mindset on what I need to shift my focus to help get this out there more and more. And I'm literally just sitting here for the first time in a podcast going, holy shit, like, how did I not see that? So thank you for that.
It takes time. Another thing I would suggest as well, which I think you're probably at the right stage now in your career to be doing this. It's the middle of the year right now. We're going into the fourth quarter. You should take some of your resources and your capacity, and in the month of September, do the university circuit and reach out to professors or lecturers in media and say, hey, I've just hit 50 episodes, 60 episodes. Here's some of the people I've had on. Here's some of the biggest insights. I would be very happy to come down and do an hour with your first year media people or third year media people. I've got 30 minutes of slides. It's only 5 to 10 words a slide. A lot of visuals, because kids are like this or like this on their laptops or in lecture halls right now. And I'll do 30 minutes Q&A. Get that videoed and put it out alongside your content. Because then what happens is you're not just the lowly creator.
Yeah.
You're also giving back based on what you've learned. And 50 episodes is difficult to get back to. You have to be very conscious about this, Dipesh. There's 3 stages for what we do. There is learn, earn, return. You have your learning period. Now you've got a little bit of sponsorship, a little bit of that earnings coming through. Some of the earning could be indirect because you might end up doing a podcast with somebody who gives you a business opportunity. Now you're involved in that business opportunity. Again, it's all within the earn paradigm. But the return paradigm, that's the part that matters. You've got your cake, your icing, and then your decoration and cherries. The decoration and cherries is the return. If you're not actively returning, you're not closing the loop. You're going to be stuck in those first 2 stages. And anybody can break into speaking. Now you're doing podcasts and you're doing a bit of speaking. Now somebody comes along and says, hey, we've got this we've got this festival happening. And as part of the festival, we've got 2 or 3 stages. Like one of my friends, Zamiha Desai, great entrepreneur. She has a thing, Hey Gorgeous.
Yep.
She may decide, I've not been to the event, I'd like to go, but she may decide that as part of her exhibition, she has a half a day breakout with some programmed stages. All right, well, we're going to have some of our exhibitors who are sponsored and bought exhibition stands. We'll put them up there to ask them questions about their trends in their world, Asian clothing, food, whatever it may be. We need a moderator. Now it's a hybrid. Now you're doing this kind of interviewing.
Yeah.
Plus you're making additional content, which then layers on that credibility.
I'm going to be giving Zamiha a call straight after this.
Costs you nothing.
Yeah. Because, I mean, she's absolutely smashed it with what she's done as well with Hey Gorgeous and the Facebook groups.
Yeah,
So
she was at my friend's, your friend's 20 in Dubai. She flew out. She crushed it.
she told me. I thought we were going to be there at the same time, but I didn't realize that was in February. We were there in Jan, and we couldn't make it back for Feb, but absolutely the next one, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Even that with the university gigs, like that is just so much profound wisdom coming my way at the moment. So I just want to say thank you so much, because I'm internally grateful for that, because it's exactly the kind of missing piece of the puzzle that I've been looking for. And I've just had penny drop after penny drop after penny drop while you've been speaking. So
Pick them up.
100%. And what is weird is a good friend of mine is someone who I play badminton with. Young kid is doing his exams right now. He's in Queen Mary. And I was thinking about the other day watching the Spotify documentary, or like the TV
The scripted series on Netflix with about Daniel Ek.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how Spotify grew, and it was all through like universities. And I was just literally 2 days ago thinking, how do I get into unis to be relevant for kids at that stage of their life? And you have literally just glued that idea together and given me something solid off the back of that. So that was...
Yeah, and uni kids dress how you dress, and that's not even a disrespect. Like, you don't look old, but you look
I
old.
appreciate that.
You look old enough to teach and inspire. You don't look young, whereby the decision maker, i.e. the lecturer, questions your credibility. You're in that sweet zone. You need to recognize what zone you're in and then leverage according to the zone that you're in.
I love that. I finally feel happy about my age. So
Yeah.
So, okay, I massively appreciate that. That's been huge. And I'm hoping that everyone listening to this as well is starting to just see how Raj thinks there, because essentially it's about taking what you do, but then flipping that script to make it more relevant to the end user. And even what you just said to me, which was, what's the metric? It's the downloads. I've not even been thinking about the downloads. I've been thinking about the content that's been going out. I've been thinking about the promotion aspect of what I'm doing, but I've not even been putting much thought on how many people are clicking the download button.
Incorrect. You've been thinking about plan, produce, publish. Promotion's the part that needs the work.
Yeah.
Promotion is that delivery where you need to pick up and say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. So maybe what you might want to do is do custom episodes or spin-off episodes that aren't necessarily in your Spotify channel, but that just breakout specials, like pop-up episodes, which you do in advance of a partner's event.
Yeah.
So say, I'll come and promote it for you. I'll put it on my YouTube channel and I'll put it on maybe you do put it on your Spotify and you explain to your listeners like, hey, listen, some episodes cut out 1 minute to do a read of an advert. I don't really do that. But what I'm going to do is every 15 episodes, one episode is just basically going to be an advert. And you don't have to listen to it because they've already got a pre-built audience. Your partner has already got a pre-built audience that's going to listen to it because it's editorial.
I love that.
So it's about how you freak the ratio.
Genius. That's the only word I have for it.
I'll take it.
So that is a little insight into what I'm assuming you are now working towards to bring to the masses through this new course that you are putting together. Talk to us a little bit about what this involves and how it's going to benefit anyone that potentially takes part in it.
What we've noticed in the last 10 years, post cameras recording to memory cards, is that in the 4 Ps, plan, produce, publish, promote, produce is becoming much cheaper to the point whereby you can effectively record a podcast on your iPhone. So if it's getting cheaper to produce content, why is there not more high quality content out there? The variable is the strategy, and the strategy lives in the paradigm of the 4 Ps and the plan. Where we've offered the most value is in the planning. Because even we now, with the scale of clients that we work with, have to bring in external producers because we're doing arenas and stuff like that.
Wow.
So if the planning is the most important part, you have to look at the planning part and say, how can we help people plan and strategize their content in a way where everything that's downstream from that, produce, publish, promote, improves and helps them hit their metrics. From our point of view, we've made content that's consumer content. You know, I was making content for Golf Online and so many different brands, B2B brands as well. And when I look at the whole suite of content and I think to myself, what got the client the highest ROI, ultimately it came down to situations where we were producing content which acted as undeniable social proof that that company does what it claims it does. Which led me to the conclusion that your content only has one job, which is to prove that everything that you say is true. If you are able to focus your content on communicating undeniable social proof, it will absolutely forge a path towards success for you. Let's look at some of our clients.
Yep.
You look at someone like Spencer Lodge, one of the biggest podcaster in the UAE. We, for English-speaking content, we were involved in the beginning, the inception of the Spencer Lodge podcast. He's had Grant Cardone on there, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins. That's the first Tony Robbins project we did was through him. He wanted to align himself with some of those subject matters, but he also wanted to do more coaching and more speaking. The podcast did what it did, but what was really interesting is when we started making walk-around content with him, where he's speaking on a stage, which is behind him is a 90-meter digital screen playing content that we've made about him. Social proof that he is who he claims he is and does what he says he does. Look at somebody else, Tahir Majithia. There are so many real estate agents. Why is our client one of the best? It's because when all the other real estate agents in Dubai were walking around from villa to villa, townhouse to townhouse, apartment to apartment, being like swimming pool, view of the Burj Khalifa, 2 bedrooms, ensuite, you know the cliche. Yep. We spent the first dozens of episodes, putting him in front of a green screen in my apartment, blowing out the back of the green screen and putting educational content. What is Rira? What is Diwa? What is Ijari? All the big of terms, right? We placed him as an educator. He proved that he was a walking bank of knowledge for any question that an investor in property outside the UAE or inside the UAE would want. He's got those answers. When we have proven what's already great about our clients, that's where they've had the most success. The conflict today is in the fact that there are people that have achieved a lot of things. You've been in sales for a long time. There are people that have had wonderful projects that they've done in their lives. It could be commercial, it could be non-commercial. But there's a discrepancy between what they've done in real life, IRL, versus what they've done URL, which is what's online. We have built a program which is called Undeniable Social Proof, USP.
Love that.
Which flips the original USP of, your unique selling point and makes it about undeniable social proof. All of the content that we break down step by step is focused on how do you produce undeniable social proof. Some of these content formats are very familiar. You would be surprised the return on investment that our clients have got from sharing their case studies, from testimonials, from doing wrap-up videos about the things that they've executed. These are not the newest media formats in the world, but they're the ones that get the highest ROI. Now, the specific taste of what goes into that video from when you press play to when the video ends, that's where we need to coach you, because we need to know exactly what your business is so that we can come up with ideas and do some workshopping around it and also set some idea of what the ROI is going to be. That's where no matter how much free content I put out, you're not going to be able to execute our way unless you involve us in the process. So we send you some training materials. We jump on regular Zoom calls with you, and we hold your hand right through the process, not just to the point where you know the program, but after. Because once you've got the suite of content, the question then is, how do you leverage it? Are you leveraging it to what part of the ACE model is existence? The ACE model is something that we teach as well, which is, are you activating customers? Which is, are you taking someone from not knowing who you are to knowing who you are? You've activated them. Or are you converting them? Which is taking somebody who knows who you are, but isn't spending with you. Or E, are you empowering them? Which is, they are already spending with you, but they're not finding you other customers like them. So they need to be empowered. So once you start looking at that ACE, we need to look at that and say, okay, realistically, what we're trying to do, are we trying to bring new business in, take people from not knowing about you to knowing about you? Or you've got a whole bunch of people that know about you, but they're not spending with you. Or there are a bunch of people spending with you, but your business is kind of like plateaued. And the best place that you're going to get your next customer is in your current customer's WhatsApp. They know the person that's most like them that can buy from you. These are the kind of strategies that we teach that, from my experience and from looking at the market, isn't something that people know how to do the way that we do it. And I've spent time with, Gary Vee, spent time talking about these kind of programs with Daniel Priestley, Matt Gray, Jack Hopkins, like the best on the planet today. We've spoken to those dudes and said, this is what we're thinking about. And at different stages, they've helped us have these various different aha moments, which has compressed the coal and turned it into a diamond. And then Vic and I have been kind of refining the diamond and making it from a rough diamond into like a masterpiece. And this is the masterpiece. So it's early. We've not quite put a bow on it yet, but there will be an opportunity for brands worldwide, as opposed to just in Dubai or just in London, to talk to us about what they're doing. And because production is cheap, if the ingredients and the inputs and the strategy going in is right, it doesn't matter whether you work with a guy who's got a Sony A7S III in Manchester or Miami or Massachusetts or Malaysia. The content's going to be the content. You're going to frame it the way you're going to frame it and record what you're going to record. Is the content inside there valuable? Is it relevant? And is it hitting your goal of activating, converting, or empowering? And that's what we're creating.
I absolutely love the sound of that. I'm super excited for when it gets released. How soon are we looking to have this out?
We'll have it out like summer 2024, like very soon.
Amazing. Well, you guys have heard it here first. So it's going to be an incredible addition to what people can then use, basically all the tools and strategies and tactics. And I think the most important thing is access to your knowledge in a practical way, just like how you did with me, just talking about the podcast here today. I can tell you now it's profound. So I'm super excited to have that out.
Yeah.
Who can utilize that? Is this for everyone? Is it for businesses of certain sizes, certain scales? Or is it people who are just starting? Like, who is it for?
We're going to do our best to make sure that whatever is available for free will be free.
Mhm.
From our perspective, we don't believe it's worth charging people for information.
Mhm.
So the information about what we do will go out at scale and will go out for free. Where you'll need to join our program is to get support with the implementation, which is everything from creative ideation, whiteboarding, workshopping ideas, building a rationale that's based on our 25 years experience. So the people that will obviously be able to then kind of afford that implementation are people that work in like the knowledge workspace. So we're talking about CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, key decision makers, heads of department, those kind of people. What's interesting about this program that we've built is that not only have we had the benefit of having in-depth, massively insightful conversations with the Daniel Priestleys and the Matt Grays and the Jack Hopkins, but I also am a course director for the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And the Chartered Institute of Marketing is obviously like government-backed, government-regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last over a decade, I've been teaching the 4 Ps of content just in boardrooms, however we want, like just improving it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have our slides, but then majority of it's workshopped. And then once I started teaching for the Chartered Institute of Marketing, I understand the rigor and the regiment of how an actual program that goes to Fortune 500 companies needs to look in a regulated way. And so now as those two circles crossed over and made this Venn diagram, I was like, wow, I understand both aspects now. What am I going to create where those two circles overlap? Well, I have to create something ultimately that's got the highest ROI for our clients since 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the conclusion that we made.
This is amazing.
I'm ultra excited to launch it, dude. This is going to be all time. It's going to join the Avengers list of brands that I've created.
Well, I have the same level of excitement as if I was going to watch like Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
I'm about like waiting for the release date of this.
Yeah. I mean, but look at the catalog, right? Like, as I mentioned, for everything that we've done well,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of things that have fallen by the wayside, a lot of time and money wasted, or time and money that's ultimately only led to lessons. But if you look at Love Soul, when Vic and I were DJing, doing New Year's Eve parties at the Gherkin building, monumental moments. I mean, 500, when I was in London at my peak, 500-600 people would come to my birthday party for free. And we'd have like Brazilian dancers and indoor fireworks and all types of crazy stuff for free for the community, for the people that support us, that eventually will end up booking us for their weddings or whatever the case may be. You look at Vaynerworld, epic like project where we launched 2 of Gary's books, and I think I've done 6 interviews with him since 2009. My Friends, Your Friends, creative content agency, my personal brand, the Raj Kotecha brand. There are other things I'm sure in that mix as well. Wu-Tang Clan mixtape. We did something called the Golden Chamber where all the Wu-Tang did little drops on it and cool, interesting stuff and some videos.
Which is still mad to hear you say, by the way.
Yeah.
Just to put that out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just listening to Ghostface's new album on the way here. And some of those are strong and some of them are a little bit weaker. I would say like probably like My Friends, Your Friends kind of sits towards the top of that. And obviously my brand because it's been around the longest. But yeah, this USP program, Undeniable Social Proof, is gonna join that upper. There's the upper league of the Avengers, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of people. There's Spider-Man and all these other people, but ultimately we're talking about Captain America and like Iron Man.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about like that kind of level. It's gonna be our forever thing. And I'm like I said, I'm in my mid-40s now. I need something that's gonna be a decade play. And when you've been in the industry as long as I have, 25 years, every 10 years, you have to kind of stop and look back and be like, hey, what does the market want today? What are they thinking about? What concerns them? And also what used to be chargeable that is now free. Like, I genuinely think that you can skip the whole first year of university by just going to Daniel Priestley's Key Person of Influence YouTube channel. You can go to Matt Gray's channel. You can go to Dan Coe's channel.
Yep.
And you're done.
And they are excellent.
They're excellent. Plus, it's another shift as well, Depesh, which is crazy. We talk about endgame. The endgame for content, we're at the beginning of it. We've come from people being forced to sit at home and consume content at scale on micro content platforms like Instagram and TikTok. In that time, micro content became so popular that TikTok and its algorithm entered a very close society of elite apps, which was Instagram, Facebook, etc. TikTok broke through. And in that, there's a lot of raw content and there's a lot of like dynamic ADHD content with backgrounds, things flying around, B-roll, all that kind of stuff. But when you look at Dan Coe or when you look at Ali Abdaal or you look at any of these guys, they are the people that can just switch on a camera and go from anywhere from 8 minutes to 3 to 4 hours, staring at the camera, and occasionally there'll be a full screen overlay with a sentence on it and then back to them. A literal talking head. That is what's going to separate the real from the fake. Because if you can get in front of a camera and be like, hey, this is my thesis, and I'm going to break it down for you step by step, and the words alone and the sequence that I put it in is cognitively fluid enough for you to understand it. It's easy enough for you to understand that I don't need the word yes to pop up behind me or whatever the case may be. You'll just take it as is. That's the Al Pacino, De Niro, elite, Denzel Washington level, right? As opposed to the B and C listers. That's actually where I'm going next, because I can do that. And I know that at least 99% of creators can't do that. And because information is becoming more and more free, like the quality of information we're talking about, if I can do that and I can put it all on the USP website, and people are like, well, I don't really have money to pay this guy or this team to work on my business and help me implement it, but I'll take all the information for free. I'll take all the downloads for free. So that's my gift. It's part of my legacy to give to people, which is like, look, only pay as if you need to.
I love that. And that is actually the reason why I love videos that like Dan Coe does. And I saw your clip just most recently where you spoke about exactly the same thing. And I think it gives you a break from watching everything kind of move or pop up or do whatever it's doing on socials like we have been seeing. But then because it gives you that break, you actually end up listening more. And because you're listening more, there's more intent to take in what's being said and then actually allow that to assimilate into something. Whereas otherwise you're kind of scrolling through something, you see it, you go, oh, that was entertaining, and then you swipe again.
Well, you hit the key word, bro. There's 3 types of content: educational, informational, or entertaining. Educate, inform, entertain. Now, entertainment requires taste and nuance. You have to really know your audience to know what's going to entertain them. Information, whilst great, is easy to replicate and disposable. So if you'd said to me, like you did, hey, there's free parking outside, that information is either relevant to me or not. I didn't drive, so it's not relevant. However, even if I did drive, in 2 years' time, the recall value is low. I don't need that information. I probably haven't held on to it in my mind. Education is when you give somebody a set of skills, knowledge, something they can implement, a framework, which they recall on a more regular basis and use on a more regular basis. But what really separates educate, inform, entertain, the real metric, is reciprocation. If you entertain somebody, they might reciprocate by buying a ticket to come and watch you do that comedy stand-up when you come to their town. Information is disposable. The most regular piece of information that we consume on a day-to-day basis, we get rid of about 2 seconds afterwards, which is what?
Don't know.
2 seconds afterwards.
Literally just
your watch.
Just your watch.
You just go to it for information. What's the information I need? Oh, it's the time. Done. You start as soon as you've got that number, you start acting according to that number.
Yeah.
But then it's gone. You don't think to yourself, when did I check my watch that day? It's like a fruit fly. It's got a short lifespan. So the reciprocation is not great. The reason why most people spend money on watches is to signal to other people, not because the time changes, right?
True.
But education, when you educate somebody, comes with a high level of reciprocation. If you feel educated by our conversation today, when you blow up or wherever you go next, you're going to think about me. If this becomes the podcast that you want it to become, your goals might change. Or if you become like the number one moderator for mindfulness for Dubai, and they say to you, yo, Dipesh, all we know is we want you to moderate. You choose your guests. Here's our budget. You fly the guests in. Now you're thinking, I want to bring that dude Raj Kotecha in.
I mean, it's happening for sure.
I'm not saying I'm not even putting you under any kind of pressure to do
No,
it.
but I mean,
I'm just
it would
saying
happen
because
regardless.
because if I just came here and told you my life story and the kind of like the bullet points, okay, great information, but you haven't been empowered by the education. My thing today is to empower you with the education that you need so that by the time you're my age, you're further than I am. Because I see it now. You're already further than I am. I didn't have 50 podcasts under my belt when I was 37,
Yep.
right? Yet I had a podcast in 2009 where I started the podcast. Welcome to the Creative Content Agency podcast. Joining me today is Gary Vee or Gary Vaynerchuk. So first, but didn't stick with it because I had every opportunity coming my way.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're further along than I am. So it's in my interest to put a battery in your back to be further than I am. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Or deeper in this section of podcasting or whatever you choose to do.
Absolutely. Mate, this has been one hell of a conversation. And I'm, well, again, super excited to see USP come out and see what that's all about for sure. I think there's going to be millions of people that benefit from that. I've done a little deep dive into your socials. Now, I'm only going to pick one of these things to get a bit more insight into. But I love doing this because it gives me an idea of how you think. And obviously, you've been just as open as you are with everyone on this podcast. So I think everyone's got a real sense of how you are. But I loved this. I love this quote that you said. And actually, Krish is the one that picked this out. And it was, your perceived weaknesses are really just a case of mislabeling yourself. And this is something that you said back in 2022. So your perceived weaknesses are really just a case of mislabeling yourself. How can someone practically today change and transform the way that they are mislabeling themselves?
Give me an example. Because I don't remember writing that, to keep it real with you. Yeah.
So, I mean, it could be on anything, right? It could be like whether it's not feeling good enough to, I mean, I can use myself as an example, right? Which I've been consciously working on. But if you take me from 7 years ago, right? I'm never going to be as big as the guys that have already smashed it out of the park. There's something different about them that I don't have. That would have been a classic case of me mislabeling myself. Now, for me, it's taken years of work to get past that. But what would you say is a way to help someone shift that mislabeling to accelerate their journey faster?
No one's stopping to read the label. So you may as well make it something that benefits you. The video that's pinned on my YouTube right now, I think it's called like The Hustler's Mentality. I recorded it in maybe 10 years ago. I was on a podcast in Dubai. And it said, it starts off something along the lines where that guy actually quoted me as well, something that I might have said 5 years earlier, where it's like, I wasn't a promoter. I just booked a venue and did my thing. I wasn't a DJ. I just did this. I wasn't an agency owner. I just got some clients. I can't remember what I said. It was maybe 15 years ago now. You have to look at something and say, okay, if everyone's doing this, no one's stopping to look at the label that Dipesh has given himself. But those that do, you may as well give them something worth reading.
I fucking love that. That is excellent. Okay, I've got a tradition where I finish on 4 questions.
Okay, let's do it.
And these are to get your quick fire insights on these. First one, what's the one skill that you think is essential for someone to be able to succeed in today's world?
Kindness.
Why?
It's more and more rare as time goes on. People that should be receiving kindness are constantly distracted and getting unkind things thrown their way. I realized recently walking around London that many of the brands that we admire for the brands that they've built, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Cadbury's, those brands, whilst they are recognizable, do not have your best interests at heart. They have their quarterly results on the stock market at heart. There's a reason why you pick up a dairy milk today and it costs 20% more than it did when you remember buying it on a regular basis when you were younger.
100%.
And it's also 20% smaller, like shrinkflation.
Yeah.
It's not got your interests at heart. To put somebody else's interests at heart and share some kindness with them in a world where kindness is like overall shrinking is a nice gift to give somebody. And I think it's the reason why one of the highest ROIs that I've ever had in business is just the use of please and thank you. You can sprinkle on asking the waiter their name. You can sprinkle on some of the other kind things, but I just feel like it's very, very important. And as I mentioned to you, you know, bumping into creators and seeing that in real life they're not that kind, but their Instagram is like, you know, smiling and big teeth and, you know, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But in reality, when you meet them, you go, oh, they used to say like never meet your heroes, but now there's just regular people that are putting out heroic content, but you meet them and they crumble. And I think what you really want to be able to do is just be kind and consistent with it. I think that's really, 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 really important. And also, being kind is an act of generosity because we also, as givers of kindness, have a lot of things going on. There's a train you got to catch. There's an email you got to respond to. There's a hospital appointment you got to book. To take time out of your day to be kind, it's expensive because everyone's got this wallet that restarts at midnight, right? Every night. It's 24 hours, goes down by seconds and minutes. So to take time out of your day is an act of generosity. I've said this before that, like, you know, living in Dubai where there's lots of people in the working community, whether it be retail or food and beverage or whatever, taking time to remember their names or ask them their names is giving them their dignity. I don't do it because I'm going to remember everyone's name. 70% of people's names I'll forget. But asking them their name whilst they're taking your order is an act of dignity to be like, hey, listen, I see you. I know that there's more to you than somebody holding a notepad asking me what red wine I want. There's a human being there. And whilst I can't get into your life and your highs and lows, we can build this little API, which is your name is this, my name is this. We see each other. So it's giving somebody their dignity and tip them.
I love that answer. What is the most impactful book or movie that's had a profound shift for you in your life?
I think I've only read it once or twice, but I think How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think I might have read that maybe 20 years ago. There was also another book by Kevin Liles called Make It Happen, which is probably about 15 to 20 years ago. Wonderful book. Kevin Liles, obviously high up executive at Def Jam, when Def Jam was Def Jam. And I thought that was a good book. But hey, listen, I'm not heavy on books. Now, if we can flip it to audiobooks.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, audiobooks. Interestingly, we've talked about Daniel Priestley a lot. I've known this cat for years, since 2013, maybe 2012. Probably a decade into knowing this dude that I actually, maybe just like during COVID times and whatnot, I might have seen my Audible credits like start to stack on top of each other. So I got Daniel's stuff, and I really feel like Oversubscribed is an incredible book. Key Person of Influence, 24 Assets. All of his books are fire.
Yeah.
I really like them. I really like the books that Gary's put out. I think they're awesome. Yeah, quite a few. Some of these cats that are putting out books are doing a pretty good job. I think Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David was a dope book. Man, we can go through my Audible. Like, my phone's way over there, but like, yeah, these are some of the ones that stand out. But I would recommend that. Like I said, I feel like going through 1 to 3 of Daniel's books, you've just saved yourself £18,000 in university fees. You know, $9,000 a year, you can go straight through to the 3rd year with a few of them books.
100% agree with that.
Yeah,
100%. And I mean, I've listened to all of them, and they are incredible for sure.
You met him?
I met him once.
He's a cool cat.
Very
my
briefly
guy. Yeah.
at it was at a Tony Robbins Yes Group event.
Right.
And he had a stand there. This was back in 2016.
Yeah.
And it was, that's where I got a signed copy of 24 Assets.
Let's go.
2016, 2017, I think it was.
Yeah.
So it was a very cool experience to meet him, and really humble guy in person. Like, you just wouldn't assume that he's created the level of business success that he has just from the way he talks to you, just regular person.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Like, we hung out a couple of years ago, and I was like, I said, I always gas him up because, like, it's just because I'm early on a lot of talent, right? Like, was early working with Dynamo, early working with Russell Peters, some of these cats, Gary for sure. I remember saying to Daniel, I was like, Daniel, you really could be one of the guys. Like, you're really the dude. And he goes, yeah, he's a humble cat, and he's British, so he's not really, well, he's Australian, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to respond to gas, yeah? And he goes, yeah, I did this interesting interview just now. It's coming out soon. He goes, Ali Abdaal, have you heard of Ali Abdaal? I said, bro, you're out of here. I said, it's done. I was like, do you realize what the fuck you've done?
Yeah.
Like, this is where the match and the gunpowder have just touched, because Ali loves what you are great at. And he goes, yeah, I didn't think it went that well, but it might have gone quite well, and let's just see how it comes out. Boom. That's probably at 1.5 or 2 million
exploded.
Now. He went on there a second time, 1.52. Off the back, I think around that same time, he did Chris Do, The Future. Chris Do is a cool cat.
Yeah.
I never spoke to him, but he's a cool dude. And then obviously he did Steven, right? Did Steven's show just now, Steven Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. That's blown up. Yep. That hit like 1 million in 9 days or something, or 7 days.
Exploded on all of them.
Yeah, he's a bad man. I love him. So, yeah, I would say that. But I'm saying that because I've recently gone over his material again. I've given it to the whole staff and been like, yo, this is our business plan. So, yeah, let's work on that.
I love that.
Yeah. What are the back two questions? Is your man going to cut us off in 2.5 minutes?
Nah, he'll be all right.
Yeah.
Jamie, I hope you're listening. He'll be all right. Final two. This podcast is called The Mindful Creator. What does being mindful mean to you?
Just taking a moment. Really just slowing down that reaction time. Like, I did meditation. I learned meditation and did some yoga in 2013. So I got whooping cough as an adult, which is very rare. And it put me on my ass for like 4 or 5 months, maybe more. And I'm talking about, like, I'm at home alone and I start choking. And the only way I can start breathing again is by clearing everything in front of the wall and then running backwards into the wall so that the wall thumps my back. So I go,
oh my gosh.
So my lungs were damaged. So I went to learn yoga and meditation through this cat called Neil Patel, who's in Harrow. Good dude. And whilst yoga was what it was, I kind of appreciated it, but I picked up the meditation stuff in 1-2 sessions. Straight away, I'm like taking breaks with my clients, going into one of their empty rooms, doing 3-4 minutes, getting to that place where all of these files that are on the desktop on top of each other get separated. And then I put them into different folders and then come back and go back to work again. So I would say proactively stopping, slowing down, and where possible, just trying to regulate your emotions. I think that's what being mindful means to me. I mean, it is to be full of mind. And to bring the mind to the front as opposed to any other urge, whether it be hunger or anger or revenge or temptation or whatever the case may be.
I love that answer. Final question for you. What's the one positive message that you would love to share with the world?
There are so many positive messages I'd like to share with the world. That's a really good question. You caught me on the last one, Dipesh.
There you go.
I was ready. I was tangoing with you the whole time.
I was waiting. First one that springs to mind.
Okay, I think that I can't think of one that's maybe traditional, but I will say one thing, that probably one of the most profound things that someone ever told me, not necessarily in the realm of positivity, is that he who owns the customer is king.
Ooh.
So 2006, I go to a large media company and I was in sales. It's probably the last time I had a job was 2006. And I go in there and this is pre-iPhone. So if you wanted to download content on your phone, you had to send an SMS. So send, I don't know, camera to 30555 to download some video about a camera. In those days, we were doing movies and television. So I go to a media company and the media company owns the rights to this content. And I said, so listen, here's how it works. Somebody sends a word, what's called a word to a short code. They get a link on their Sony Ericsson or BlackBerry or Nokia. They press the link. It instigates a transaction with the carrier, the wireless carrier, O2, whoever you want. And then they'll get charged £3 and they'll get your clip. And they say, okay, cool. How much do we get? I said, you get about 15%. And they were like, And they were like, why? And I was like, well, the SMS carrier charges this much. The technology software server that holds the content charges this much. The wireless network that's got the customer charges 40%. And he goes, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, but you've already made the content. It's just money for nothing, money for old rope. He goes, no. And we're walking out and I'm like, just tell me why. Why not? I've got to go back to my boss and say that you basically just blankly told me no and I've not got a reason. And he put his arm around me and he said, Raj, I'll tell you one thing. He goes, he who owns the customer is king. He goes, you want me to sell this content on the back of my DVDs because the network provider and nobody else is going to market it. I have to put your short code on the back of my DVDs because you're not going to promote my content. And then you leave me as the person who instigates the sale and owns the content with 15%. I can't do it. That was one of the most profound things. What's the lesson that anyone can learn? My friends, your friends, 6,500 people, everyone registered via email. I can now go to venues with the people, with the audience. He who owns the customer is king. And I'll end with this. The reason why I'm here today, Dipesh, is because most people go in search of audience. Why do most DJs want to play festivals or West End nightclubs? Because they want to get in front of a new audience, right? They think if I can get in front of that audience, they'll see me for who I am and how great I am, and my life will change. I'm the kind of DJ that will go and perform at a gig because of the sound system. I'll bring my own audience. I'm here today because you are the club and the sound system. You do a great job at being a podcaster. I'll take this and give it to my audience. I'm not here for your audience. I'm here for the sound system, not the crowd. Me and you together today can do something which is so special because of the way that you do what you do, that when my audience sees this, they will benefit. Some of that limelight's going to shine on you. I really hope that you benefit and we progress together.
Big love. Raj Kotecha, this has been an absolute pleasure.